Okay, so I want to share with you all today about homeschooling 101, what you really need to know to get started. I'm a homeschooling mama of three, and I've been homeschooling for 6+ years. I have three little ones, like I said, a new 3 year old, a 5 year old, and an 8 year old. And I have a background in English and reading education and created a Facebook community called the Homeschooling Mamas Collective that actually has over 120,000 members now and is continuing to grow. And that's kind of a little bit of my background and where I come with homeschooling. I started homeschooling with my first after he did kindergarten, and we realized it just wasn't a fit for him. Then we transferred over to homeschooling, and we have been at it really before then and ever since. We kind of started when he was super young at 1.5 and have been loving it since then. So what you can expect from this session is I'm going to share all about homeschooling, what homeschooling is, and how you can get started with it, along with setting yourself up for success. So, choosing the right curriculum, what curriculum is going to work best for your kids and your family, and creating your own support system, right? Because you do not want to do it alone. It can be overwhelming. So, having a support system is definitely key. And then also go over some quick tips for success, how you can get started on the right foot with minimal stress. I'm all about helping moms and dads do this with low stress. It does not have to be complicated or stressful to homeschool. So let's get into it. So, what is homeschooling? Well, homeschooling really is whatever you want it to be. It depends on your family and what works for you. That's the great thing about homeschooling is you can make it work for your family. So, for my family, for example, we like structure. So, as you can see in the background of that picture on the left, we have schedules, we have calendars, we like our routines. So that's how we do it. But there are families that I know that really just have a flow. They go with the flow. They do this subject on this day, another subject on another day. That's the great thing about homeschooling is what is it is really defined by you and your family. So why homeschooling? Well, homeschooling is a great if you're looking for personalized education for your children, if you have specific family values and beliefs that you want to instill that may not be addressed at public school. Also, it's a safe place, right? You know where your kids are, you know what your kids are doing and what they're learning, and you can foster that growth in a way that they may not be able to experience in a classroom with 20 other kids. And then the flexibility and freedom. You can travel to see grandma and grandpa if they live far away on a Wednesday if you decide, when you have that freedom of not having to be tied down to that type of schedule. And then academic concerns. This is kind of where we moved to homeschooling because my son was ahead in school and he was getting so bored that it helped us to transition so he could do higher levels in certain subjects and remain at the same grade level in other subjects. So if you have concerns like that, or dyslexia, or ADHD, or whatever it may be, you can really address those concerns more deeply when you're doing that one on one. And the homeschooling landscape. So this is something that you need to know about when you begin homeschooling is that it's different everywhere. It's not always the same. So there are some areas of the world where they're super relaxed. Some states in the US, like where I live in Texas, very relaxed. We don't really have to turn in anything showing what we've taught our children. But of course, you want to do your best. But like I said, some states and some regions really let you have control and do whatever you think is best for your children. Now, there are other areas that are super regulated, where, like Germany, different parts of Europe, certain states in the US, where you have to provide documentation to show what you're teaching, when you taught it, how many days they did school, how many hours, even sometimes. Sometimes they require standardized testing, just like in public school. It really varies. So, a lot of times in my Facebook community, when people are considering moving to new places, they ask that question, like, what is homeschooling like in this state or in this region? Because that can be really important when you're looking to move as well. And how to find local guidelines. This is something that I included for the US, but if you're in a different area, don't stress. I'll include a link in the chat later after my session so you can find your regulations as well. But for the US, what you want to do is go to hslda.org/legal. On that site, you can just click on the state you live in and review your state guidelines there. So once you click your state, it'll pop up with general guidelines. Then you can click on more specifics to get all the laws in your state around homeschooling. That is so helpful because that website has all the states in one place. Like I said, if you're not in the US, not a problem. I'll share a link for that later after the session. And just so you know, common requirements uh, are notice of intent, which means just a letter saying we intend to homeschool instead of going to or going back to school. Instructional requirements, for example, in Texas, they don't require you to show proof of what you're teaching, but they do say, okay, we want you to teach language arts, math, science, and state history or something like that, right? So they'll have some subjects that they want you to cover, even though they may not require you to show proof of covering them. They just want to make sure and let you know, hey, I would really like you to do these subjects. And then record keeping. Some states require you to submit a portfolio at the end of the year. Some states require you to submit proof of attendance. So you'll have an attendance tracker. Different things like that may be required by your state. And also, some do standardized testing as well. So you'll just want to be aware of what your state requires so that you can stay in line with that. And then registering properly. This is really important to make sure if your state is one that's more regulated, that you are sticking with those registration guidelines. So, like I said, the notice of intent. Most regions do require you to notify your local school or district, letting them know that you plan to homeschool. There are also some that require completed paperwork. So, again, HSLDA is a great source for seeing what paperwork is needed, basic forms that you'll need to fill out and submit. All of that you can usually find on there. If not, you can always reach out to your public school and ask them questions about any forms that they may require, so you have that information as well. And then you'll also want to pay attention to deadlines. Some states set deadlines for students to notify that they will be homeschooling. So you want to make sure if your area does, you don't miss that deadline if you intend to homeschool. And then some regions also require you to submit a yearly notification of intent. So with learning plans, with proof of parental qualifications, some areas in the world require you to have a diploma to be able to homeschool your child or require you to have a certain degree. So make sure you're aware of any requirements. And like I said, HSLDA is a great place to get that information. Now, choosing the right curriculum. So once you have made the decision to homeschool, it can be very overwhelming because if you do a Google search of any subject and put homeschooling next to it, you're going to find a ton of resources. Okay. There's a lot out there, and that can be overwhelming, overstimulating, all of the things. And I get it because I was right there with you when I first began. And I think it's really important to quickly narrow down those options. So, one way to do that is by identifying your child's unique learning style. And after this session, I'll put a link in the chat to my free learning assessment, which is really helpful for doing that for kids. It really narrows down what their actual learning style is. Now, how does this help you choose the right curriculum? Well, based on their learning style, you can see, okay, if my kid is a hands-on learner, they're not going to enjoy a curriculum that is all about learning facts and flashcards and reading and memorization, right? They're going to want something where they do hands-on activities, science projects, getting their hands dirty, nature studies, things like that. So you'll have to really dig into your child, their needs, their learning style to pick the right curriculum. So that would be step one. Then step two, once you know, okay, this is what my child likes, this is what they don't like, this is how they learn, you're going to want to set some educational goals. So if your state requires certain subjects, you'll want to make sure, okay, we want to do these subjects this year. That's like a basic goal. Then you could say, here's what we want to learn within that subject this year. So setting really specific goals can really narrow down those options quickly, which is great. You want that because there's so much out there. So once you have figured out your goals, then you can go to Google or wherever you would like to go and research, because then you have a lot more specific search options, right? You're not going to come up with 70 million results, which is good. So Once you do find a few that you like, you can compare those curriculum options. A great way to do that is being part of different homeschooling communities, because there are tons of moms to give you feedback. This worked for my child because, this didn't work for my child because. So if you're not yet, you're welcome to become a part of my homeschool community on Facebook. It's called the Homeschooling Mamas Collective. And we have tons of moms in there who are very helpful and collaborative and engaged, that would be happy to help if you have questions about curriculum that you've never used before, or if you're just getting started, right? And you have no idea where to start with curriculum, but you know your child's learning style, people can give you tips on that. So find community to get that research as well, and to compare those options, because just Google isn't always good enough. Having crowdsourced information is really helpful. And then step number 4, try and observe and adjust as needed, right? This is really important. And this is my quick tip for this for this section. You can change your mind on curriculum anytime. That's the great thing about it, that's different than public school, right? If a curriculum is not working for you, if you go a week or two and realize, like, my kid is hating this, or we are struggling, or it's too hard, or it's too easy, change it. Like, you're not tied down to it forever. And you don't have to feel like, okay, if we didn't accomplish this whole curriculum, we failed. No. Failing would be just continuing to do what's not working. It would be hard on you, hard on your kid, and just make the homeschooling experience not a good one. So, like I said, try, observe, and adjust. Don't hesitate to make a switch if you need to. And if you look at all the curriculum and see that you're feeling overwhelmed, a great way to start with homeschooling is to choose an open and go curriculum. What does that mean? It's one where you open it, you have a workbook, or you have lessons, you simply pull them out, read off. Sometimes they even have like a sample script that you say to your child, have them do the worksheets or activities that go along with it, and you're done for the day. That's called an open and go curriculum. And that's a really great way to get started for parents who are completely new or have no experience in education, and you're just wanting to get your feet wet and get started. So that is a great way for that. And then building your support system, right? This, like I said, is huge. A support system is much needed because we can't do it alone. Like, community is so helpful. So, why does it matter again? Because it provides vital support and encouragement and resources. Just like I said, in my community, people are always swapping resources, swapping ideas. It's just so helpful. And where do you find that support? You can find local homeschooling groups. Facebook is a great place for that if you just put in homeschooling group in your city, or homeschooling group in your state. And then you can find online communities like my Facebook community, or there's a homeschooling channel here on The Great Discovery. There are so many options to find communities. And then a great thing, if you're wanting in-person connection, look for co-ops. If you've never heard of a co-op before, it's a group of families who come together to organize and share educational activities. They do classes, they do field trips. We're part of a really cool co-op that does all of it, right? So we meet every Friday. 2 Fridays of the month, we do school days, which are like lessons and activities, and we do lunch together and all of that. And then the other 2 days, one is a park day and one is a field trip day. So you can find co-ops like that. If you're a more experienced homeschooler, you can even start your own. I definitely suggest that. I did that last year and it was really fun. It's a lot of work, but really fun. And then also finding activities for your kiddos. Do they want to do PE, choir, band, sports? Just because they're homeschooling and not in that public school system doesn't mean they won't have the opportunity to participate in all those extras. You just may have to be creative, right? Okay, so what makes homeschooling fun and social? Like I said, you got to be creative here sometimes. So if you're looking for something to get your kids involved in, they can do volunteer projects. And this also helps later on when they're getting ready to apply for colleges or do a full-time job or something like that. These give them that extra curricular type of support on their resume or on their documentation to send to apply for college. Like I said, homeschool co-ops, arts and crafts club. We do at our house, we do monthly themed play dates. So we'll have a Valentine's play date, a Christmas play date, themed parties. We do those as well. STEM challenges, those are really fun because you can bring your friends, your homeschooling friends together and have a STEM day with one theme, like an egg drop theme where they have to create something not to drop the egg. Those are just general ideas, but you can have a book club by age or grade level. Field trip Fridays. I see tons of Facebook local groups that have field trip Friday groups, which is really fun. We've been a part of one of those before. And then entrepreneurship fairs, you can find those online as well, or create your own, of course, where your child can create something to sell, and all a big group of children all sell whatever they've created or made at this entrepreneurship fair. And then science fairs or project days. You don't have to miss out on science fairs and projects if you don't want to, just because you're homeschooling and you're choosing a different path. You can either find these options outside of school or create them yourself. I am all about, if there's something that I want to do with my kids for homeschool, we just do it. Like, if we don't know someone who's doing it, I just start it. Like, I feel like as a homeschooling parent, you already have that I'm going to do this mentality. So it's kind of setting you up for success with things like that. So use that momentum and just make what you want to happen. And then quick start tips for success. Start simple. So if this is your first year homeschooling, don't start a co-op. Don't do all of that I mentioned, but just start simple. Use an open and go curriculum if you need to. Start with the basic subjects. Don't go overboard with extracurriculars or lessons about things that aren't required. Keep it simple and be flexible too. Remember, this is homeschool. You don't necessarily have to do Monday through Friday. If your child is sick, do it again tomorrow. Like, keep it flexible. And tip number 3, celebrate small wins. Every Friday in my Facebook group, we celebrate wins and people share, hey, my child read 2 words this week, or they started chapter books, or they learned how to add. Like, celebrate those tiny victories along the way because they add up, and then you see, wow, my child has progressed so much this year. And I really liked this quote from Emily Foss. It says, when the atmosphere encourages learning, the learning is inevitable. So it doesn't have to be this perfect setup. It doesn't have to be incredibly extensive, right? If you provide just an atmosphere of learning for your children, it's the learning is going to happen. So don't be overwhelmed, don't stress out. It's going to be good. And then top resources. Here are some of our top resources for homeschooling. There's so many, like I said, you can find online. But the top ones that I have are the homeschooling channel here on The Great Discovery. You can sign up for different membership levels. There's a free level where you get like homeschooling tips and just general community. Then there are levels that include things like a yearly homeschool roadmap, unit studies, a monthly workshops, homeschool planners, flashcards, curriculum lists. There's so much available for you on The Great Discovery for homeschooling, and it's only going to continue to grow. So make sure you plug in here. And then there's also, we'll talk about this more later, but Magic Minds AI Academy for Kids has so many tutoring options available for your kids, along with helping them write their very own book. So there's so much available that your kids can plug into. And if you have any homeschooling questions, I'm ready for them now. So let me know.
You're muted, Tim. You're muted.
I think he's having trouble, guys. Hang on 1 second.
I got it. I have so many screens going here as part of the home office thing here going on as well. But if anybody does have any questions, Kendra, I have a quick question. So, as you were saying, you could almost kind of go through and create your own curriculum. Now, is there any standardized, exams that you need to do, for example, to get a high school or grade, type of advancement? And how do you resource those? I know you've got a whole drop of different resources that you're going to be dropping here in a minute. Maybe you want to drop that when you can, that people
Yeah.
can get in on. But what's the I had my first. I have two daughters, and one of my daughters, we went through homeschooling for a good part of her upbringing, and then she moved into public school. And she was absolutely just doing great, and it seemed like as soon as she went into public school, it was suddenly became a challenge. Then my second daughter, I kind of wimped out and went right into private school with her, and I'm going, oh gosh, but she's just fabulous. So private school was a good choice in that particular case. But what are the actual standards? And I know we've got some other speakers that are experts in this community that you're going to be hearing from later. All of them also have resources that they'll be able to drop here for you also. But what are some of the things that you need to do to make sure that they are recognized when they go into college or anything with their accreditations that they've received?
Yeah, so in Texas, and I believe all of the US, the ACT or SAT is usually a college standard. That's something that definitely some of the other speakers can speak more on than me because I'm in the thick of the little ones. So I don't have a ton of experience with the older ones yet. But the ACT and the SAT are the biggest two that I'm aware of. And then for as far as state guidelines, when they're going up through high school, middle school, all of that, the different exams really depend on your state, right? Some states require that as homeschoolers you do those, and some states don't. So that's where you really need to dig into your specific state requirements. And hslda.org has all of that listed. So if your state does require certain standardized testings, you'll know, and they'll give you tips on how to get those, how to do that testing. Sometimes it's something that the state provides, sometimes it's something that you do have to pay for out of pocket. So you'll want to be aware of that before you kind of dig in.
Excellent. Now, if anyone has any questions or comments, first the chat is open, so feel free to go ahead and put them right into the chat. But you can also, down at the bottom of your screen, there's a button that says raise hand. Sometimes it's under there's some react options. But go ahead and put your hand up. It looks like Beverly's on it. Hi, Beverly. How are you? Good to see you, dear.
Hey, I'm
What's the
great.
question for?
Well, this is interesting. I mean, I'm way beyond kids in school, but I do have great grandkids now that are part of that, and a lot of nieces and nephews. And I know a lot of people are starting to really get discouraged. My daughter, when she had her son from third grade on, he homeschooled, and I mean, at 3 months being in homeschool, he goes, "Mom, I'm so glad I'm here. I'm learning so much more." He is now 22, so that was back then. So my
Yeah.
question is, because he was on a computer thing and it was part of the state of Nevada. And, but some of the curriculum, some of the road bumps that they were running into was, was the financial thing, because it was, it wasn't really public run, but it was still under different rules and regulations. If someone were to look in every state, and like you said, they're all different, what is the first place someone would go to say, I'm thinking about homeschooling? Where would you say the best place to do? I mean, do you Google it? Where would you go for something like that?
Yeah, I think HSLDA, just if you're wanting to know what to do, that is the best place. That's a really good place.
HSLDA? Okay.
Yes, .org.
Dot
And it
org.
just has all the state guidelines, it has legal requirements. So you know the very basic standards of what you need to do to be able to homeschool, whether you need to send a letter of intent, whether you need to do standardized testing, whether it just goes over all of those options. So I think that is a really good place to go and get those very basic requirements. So okay, I have to at least do this to be able to homeschool. And if you're able to do that or what you need, what help you need, all of that.
Now, does that also tell someone if they want to be, let's just say they don't have kids, or they want to start a homeschooling outfit to be able to say have it as a job, right? And make it available for other parents. So rather than send them to daycare or haul them to school, they'll be able to bring them into that homeschooling situation. Is this same .org?
No,
That
this is more for homeschooling parents. If they're wanting to start like a homeschool co-op or something like that, Google is a really good resource. I'm actually planning to make a course here on the Great Discovery about how to start a co-op. And they could also look into, I'm not sure about state guidelines on co ops, if that would be like a daycare or school guidelines. So there would have to be a lot of research on that for sure. But I would say starting off, you would want to figure out what those guidelines are for your state. So I would say co op state guidelines. I would type that into Google and start there, because it's going to be different again for every state. And if they're wanting the children to stay in home with them without parents, that's a whole new ball game. So they would have to really dig into research on that, because that I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be great to see your course when you come out on that. So
Yeah, definitely.
because you know all the right questions to ask. It was very informative, and wow, I mean, if there's parents listening out there, uh, listen up, because again, kids still get that interaction. And what I liked about what they had in Nevada was with that organization, they had every single week where they get together with the kids, whether it was in a Zoom, but they actually had physical things that they went on, and they were
Yes,
like field trips. Every single week they had an in-life person field trip where all the kids that were in this classes together,
that's great.
so if the parents in the city or the state or the town, the group, if there's something, that they could, come together in that group, like you say, with a co-op or even without a co-op, is to just be able to have like play dates of all the kids that are in
Yes.
homeschool.
Yeah, and that's kind of where that's more of where I have the experience, is with co-ops and Facebook groups where we do weekly meetups, things like that. And those are super easy to start. You can really make it your own. Just like with homeschooling, you decide what you want to provide in those groups, and you connect with other parents to make it work.
Okay,
Okay.
looks like we have
Thank
a
you.
few minutes left, so we need to jump
Sure.
up to another couple questions. We've got Patrice Porter. Patrice is amazing. She's on the Great Discovery Education Marketplace as the gardening grandma, and she has some absolutely
Nice.
fabulous like home horticultural classes that kind of teach kids to garden, and it's just a fabulous. It fit right in. So Patrice, what's your question?
Well, right along with that, Tim, that I am I believe like gardening and those life skills, they should be part of every child's education. So
Yes.
I developed those programs like Got Dirt Gardening for kids, but also giving them the opportunity to learn their academic lessons in that real life situation of gardening. Like I feel like I learn best like that. But being as like I provide those programs and that, what would be the best way to make them more accessible? Like I've got them up here on the Great Discovery, and I would love to have more kids gardening and learning their math while they're doing it. Math,
Sure.
science, and literacy.
Yeah, I think it would be great for us to connect offline as well, because I have tons of ideas for that. But just as a general overview, I think connecting with homeschooling groups, especially on Facebook, that's a really big place for homeschooling groups. Getting connected with admins and people in those groups that can help promote your course there is really helpful. And maybe starting your own homeschooling focused Facebook community could be really great around gardening and around kids who have a passion for plants or whatever it may be, right? Building a community around that would be awesome. And you could even transition that into having a channel around it on the Great Discovery.
Okay.
Excellent.
Patrice, feel free to drop a link to your course is fabulous. I share it
Yeah.
all over the place with that. I love it.
Okay.
My daughter loves it as well. Go ahead and drop it in the chat. Let's move up to Dr. Monica Hinton. Dr. Monica, good to see you, dear. I'm so glad you're on. I know you've got a session coming up towards the end of the day, a bonus session as we started talking about your content and what you're working with. Everybody's got to stick for this. She's great. Dr. Monica Hinton, go ahead.
Hi, Kendra. Nice meeting you.
Hi.
So I have a situation where I have a nephew he's already in high school, but he
Mhm.
may have to transition to homeschooling.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on that or suggestions?
Yeah, sure. I think just really see where he's at. Is he at the grade level he's supposed to be at? Is he above? Really focusing on where he's at in his subjects and what he needs to accomplish before, because high school is a different ball game, right? They really need to hone in on those subjects and make sure they're ready for whatever next step they decide on. So I think really figuring out where he's at right now and where he wants to go to figure out the game plan for homeschooling. So is he wanting to go to college? Is he wanting to do a trade school? Is he just wanting to jump into a career? I think finding out those things as quickly as you can, is really helpful to navigate. Okay, here are our next steps. And then, of course, looking at your state guidelines. Do you need to notify your public school or district? Does he need to still do standardized testing? All of those kind of things you'll want to nail down as well.
All
Okay,
right, thank you so much.
thanks,
Of
Dr. Monica.
course.
And Dr. Monica's session is going to be coming up later. It's called Unleash Your Inner Hero, where psychology meets superpowers, from a clinical psychiatric position. Thank you so much, Doc. Stephen Walters, last question, and we're going to jump up to into our next question session.
All right, we'll try to make this concise. So, hi, Kendra, I'm Steve. So, I do teach college communications. I work with a lot of first generation students, and I have worked with a lot of homeschoolers. And one of the issues I found is that the kids that are from the one person school are very introverted and very shy. And the kids from 11, I can't do it on my hands, but 11 or more kids, and I've had them from the same family, aren't so much as introverts. How do you apply communication skills like public speaking into the homeschool? And at what age do they start?
Sure. I think it can really vary based on your teaching philosophy, right? As a parent, of course, but there's a lot of room to do that. So there's different curriculums that you can use, like classical conversations, where you're speaking from a very young age, reciting things that you learn, right? Or you can get them involved in speech and debate clubs. There's homeschooling clubs locally that you can get your kids involved in, especially if you feel like they're very introverted or shy or need that extra attention to that area. You can get them involved in those extracurricular type things. And then being involved in things in the community, like I know our church has Awanas, right? Where they have to get up and recite Bible verses that they memorized. Just simple things that you can do in the day to day to get them speaking publicly is really helpful. So I think parents just need to work on really integrating that into the day to day. It doesn't have to be a big extra thing, but it can be if you want it to be. But just integrating it into life is really helpful.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, well,
Thank you.
thank you, Stephen. And by the way, thank you so much, Kendra. Great work. I know we're going to be hearing from you in a little bit.
Thank you.
Kendra just dropped some of the resource links into the chat, so feel free to grab those.